We started last week with a story from Francine Rivera, playing with the magic, looking at how the magic in big moments gets us to where we need to go. And today we're going to talk much more about the mundane magic, the magic that is just with us every day, just little stuff. It doesn't have to be grand or glorious or have a lot of pizzazz or wow. And the more we cultivate that daily magic, I call it everyday magic. I love everyday magic. The more we pay attention to it, call it forth, enjoy it, honor it, the more it comes to us. And it sort of buoys up our existence, if you will. And it just, again, as we spoke about last time, it's the winks from the universe along the way. It supports us to feel less alone, to know we're in dialogue with the universe and not the only ones talking. And it supports us then to open to what's bigger. What am I a part of? What am I one with? So I just want to say right now that Lynn Fraser will be with me later on, and she is part of the Yoga Farm community. She does some teaching for some of the yoga teacher trainings. She does a daily meditation that's absolutely fabulous. That's really about presence practices, really dropping in with body and breath. Lynn supports people to calm, to meet, to be with their own nervous systems and their own bodies and thoughts and awareness in the moment. And through that awareness, she supports us to deal with our trauma, the big trauma, the little trauma, and to come back to now, where with our own rapt attention, it's just what's happening in our own bodies, in our own beings. We come to wholeness, we come to wellness, or we just bring ourselves down from a moment when we think we're not okay. So one of the things I want to talk about related to the magic is that the magic is with us when we think we're not okay. The magic is with us when we feel disconnected, when we think we've lost it, or when we're mad at ourselves. Maybe we feel that it's a punitive thing. We're being punished if the magic doesn't show up, but we'll go there ahead of time and we'll think, oh, now it won't show up. And then we create that. Or we just miss what's there. We don't see it. We don't give it our focus and we lose track again. So part of the whole thing of cultivating magic in the mundane, the daily, everyday magic, is that it trains us to watch for it. It trains us to see it. It's like the little glimmers can come through even when we're plastered to our beds in a state of grief or depression or like some super freeze because of a life disappointment or failure. Failure is always a perceived failure, not a real one. But so cultivating the mundane as an ongoing thing then calls it forth more readily or gets us back to it faster when we disconnect. The magic never quits us. So speaking of that phrase, I was talking to Daniela Hess of the Yoga Farm community, and she said what she loves about the everyday magic thing is that when you see the magic in the mundane, then the mundane quits you. So as we focus on it every day in the most mundane things, I'm washing the dishes and whoa, bubbles are cool. The more I do that, the more the mundane quits me. So last time we talked about, for example, aligning numbers on a clock. That you always look up when it's 11:11 or 4:44 or whatever. So, there's more than clocks. I often have aligning numbers on receipts, or I have a numbers magic when I'm just doing my checking and balance. I know my online banking keeps track, but I like to actually write things down and do the math and know that what I think I have it matches what the bank thinks. And so sometimes I just have these palindromes where like 8008 is a palindrome. It's the same going forwards and backwards, or aligning numbers, or repeated numbers, like throughout the little tally of the day, like the number 47s in several entries. But so today, for example, I was with my son, and we were just on an errand, and we stopped for gas, super mundane stuff, nothing cataclysmic going on with him. And he just pumped the gas while we were talking, and just stopped when it stopped itself. Can you see this? Do you see all those ones at the bottom? That's how many gallons we had gotten by the time he was done pumping. So, and I had asked for, hey, show me that I'm tapped into the magic. Give me something in these next couple of days. I think I said that yesterday, as I was heading toward this program again. And that's just super fun. It's not going to change anyone's life, but it sort of does, because the more we notice it, the more we allow ourselves to live in the fullness of who we are. Because when we get trapped in the mundane, we think we're nothing, or we think a life is pointless, or we require intensity, or grant, or glory, or constant successes to feel okay about our worlds. And when these little things are happening, and we're noticing them, and we're loving them, and we're loving life because of them, then we actually get to stretch into our missions and our soul callings and our growth, our healing and evolution. Let's see. So, I wanted to just mention a couple more examples, like, bugs, just the fact that you can always see a new bug your whole life. So words, there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen with words, like the radio's on, or you walk into a store and the song that's playing echoes your thoughts, or something you needed to hear, or reflects what you were thinking about. It could even alert you to how tragic your mood is. Maybe there's no grand significance. Like you realize, oh my God, like my thoughts have been sounding like this country western singer is describing, the loss of their sweetheart or whatever. And we can call ourselves back. The magic is always calling us back to ourselves, back to now, back to playing with whatever we're playing with, following our own belief systems, living in integrity. There's a word game that I like to play, and sometimes I just think it's so much fun when the words that I'm forming in a particular game relate. They hold themes of what I've been thinking about, or what's been happening today in my little world. It could be stupid stuff about what the cats are doing, or whatever. So we talked last time about bird sightings a little bit, and my friend Evangeline, who is a wonderful coach and healer, her website is sacreddive.com. I love Evangeline. For those who know the Enneagram, she's a 7, and she's super fun. And so we were comparing bird stories, and she was doing a session with someone as the one being healed, not as the healer. And it was about matters of the family, and she was in a state of real sorrow. And there's a bird, the rose-breasted grosbeak, that represents, when you look up the meanings, one of the things it represents is healing the family heart. And while she was in this session, a bird came to the window. It was a rose-breasted grosbeak, and it was like slamming its chest repeatedly into the window. Now, that's not a mundane event. That's like kind of a fabulous sighting. But so in the mundane, I remember one time I saw the rose-breasted grosbeak. The first time I saw it, I looked it up, and we were very much in need of family healing. And this was many years ago. And this summer, so that was a one-time sighting. That was one of those wow kinds of sightings. But this summer, a rose-breasted grosbeak has nested. The pair has nested in the woods just behind my girlfriend's house, and we keep a bird feeder right on the edge there, and they've been coming to the feeder, and it's just always amazing to see them. I mean, look up that bird if you haven't seen it, rose-breasted grosbeak. It's like it has a heart on its chest, and it's a like blue jay cardinal sized bird. It's a little bigger than your average songbird. And the red on the chest is just a fabulous color. It's like a deep rosy red, absolutely fabulous. But so this summer, there they are. And there's definitely a healing the family heart theme going right now in our little combined world. And it's just the sweetest thing. But when I see them, they're just at the feeder, and it doesn't necessarily correspond with some big event. It's that wink from the universe. It's like, oh yeah. And sometimes I just see them and think they're cool. And sometimes I see them and I think again of healing the family heart, and I pause with that. So sometimes with the recurrences of something that's become symbolic for you, plus a memory or plus a thought insight or a flash to something, it's the combined effect that brings something in for you. Like I told a little cardinal story last time, and that was kind of a momentous event where a baby cardinal lived in my house for 2 days. I don't even think I mentioned it was learning to fly. So like I had little sticks and like little bowls that have pens in them. There was a dearth of branches in my living room and whole house, it turns out. So I just kind of put them around in different places, and the bird kept landing on them. It was so much fun. But so, sometimes I'll find a cardinal feather. And so I'm called back sometimes to that event, sometimes to what that meant to me, sometimes to just, looking it up again and seeing what it means to be me now. And there was a time when my dad was dying. I walked out of my parents' house to go get Starbucks. That was the nearest thing that was drinkable. And a fox was dancing in their little suburban cul-de-sac neighborhood area, dancing. Like this fox was dancing. It was so beautiful. It was so amazing. And it didn't leave because I stopped the car and watched it. Well, so, sometimes I just see a fox. And so, so there it is. What do I do with that this time? By the way, at the time that happened with my parents, one of the things I always remember about multiple times looking up fox is that you get to play with invisibility and visibility. And, like just sort of being queer in, super white, super Republican, super Baptist, just super Christian area of Kansas, like way suburban of Kansas City. I knew I actually had been feeling fine and good, and I kept checking in. And then there was the day that I walked into some public place and there were a whole bunch of dykes there. It was like their meetup was happening or something. Like, so that timing thing can just happen all the time to remind us, yeah, you're good, you're fine. So about timing, we talked last time about the parking lot God, about, how it can, if you feel that you're one with all that is, and you are the same force as, or you are part of the organizing intelligence of the universe, I am not separate from source, then it does make sense that someone might be leaving just as I'm arriving, that we're part of this larger orchestration and we don't have to sit around orchestrating it. So certainly sometimes when you're aligned and you're in the flow and you've really tapped into effortlessness, you have these sort of magical, everywhere I go, the Red Sea is parting for me. And you just swoop down the road. And that's amazing. That's fun. And it feels lovely and it feels good. However, it's problematic when we make the opposite mean, oh no, I'm disconnected, source is frowning upon me, I've lost all worthiness, this is probably because I was sharp with my kid today or whatever. So I am very adamantly against those kinds of interpretations. So, Danny the other day was saying, there's really two things the magic is calling us to. Those little cool magical things that happen, or it's like either you're aligned, yay, carry onward, or you're out of alignment, course correct. So I think course correct is my term, but same idea. So So I love that. So, yeah, it could be that you're out of alignment in the moment that you're just hitting every stop. But what I notice when that happens to me, or the parking lot, the parking space doesn't open up and you end up in the far parking lot walking half a mile, what I find is that that's what I need that day. It's not that the magic has left me. It might be, especially if I get increasingly frustrated and anxious and irritated by these things, if that happens, then my task is to notice my reaction to that and not interpret it as I'm out of alignment, the magic has left me, but whoa, I need to get back to a space that calls in the magic, that allows me to tap into the magic, because the magic doesn't exist in the realm. It actually does, it's everywhere, but the magic doesn't thrive, and we can't get to it very well in a space of tension, in a space of problem solving. My life is a problem that needs to be solved, or in those urgent, I've got to make this happen and it's got to be this timing. The magic happens in spaciousness. It happens in effortlessness and flow, and it cultivates and creates more of that for us. It allows us to cultivate more of that. So when we're not in that flow, and when we feel like, oh no, am I out of alignment? So am I in the religion of efficiency right now? Am I thinking that I have to get there fast and I need to be on this timeline and I've got to get this thing done today? And then, am I in doership? Am I believing that my worth comes from what I do, what I achieve? It is checking off the boxes that I made for very good and sensible reasons, now becoming my whole reason for living, because the boxes got created because there was something we wanted to be part of. Maybe they're about taking care of family. Well, the original impetus wasn't those checklist things. The original impetus is love and holding them and creating a beautiful world with and for them, and living your best life through the ups and downs with people you love and want to be there for. So maybe the thing that I think I must get done today is related to my work, which is my mission, which is what I'm in love with, which is what comes through me, what life has called me to, what everything aligned to get me to. So to stay in the magic with that is not to always be on time and always get everything checked off and get everything done that I'm told I'm supposed to do or that I decided I was supposed to do, and so on. So when we disconnect from the magic, the call could be to just check in, and especially if it's those glitchy, slow you down things. So slow down. What if that's the magic? Connect to what the original impetus was for what you're doing. Connect to what the moment's calling you to. What the magic doesn't do, folks, and this is another reason I love mundane magic, it doesn't protect us from the human experience. It's not trying to prevent our living a human life. Human lives include suffering. They include trauma. But to me, these are healing journeys we're on, journeys of healing and evolution. And sometimes there's a setup of trauma to get there. Now, I'm not saying that for us to just get over our trauma or disregard it, or pull yourselves up by the bootstrap and get over it. No. We need to lovingly, compassionately, tenderly meet our own trauma. And as we heal it, as we do that, as we are willing to be present with our traumatized selves, then we can get present with our mundane selves, with the self that just needs to chop wood, carry water, do the dishes, change the diapers, take care of the banking, and get somewhere on time to fulfill an agreement, and so on. But we also get to, when the magic isn't rescuing us, we get to meet our ego structures. The reason I teach the Enneagram is it's a typology system that really describes a map of consciousness. We are all the whole Enneagram, not just the one type that we identify as our core type. But there are certain tendencies. There are certain challenges that each type has, and really the Enneagram just describes the healing journey we need to be on. And when we're willing to meet ourselves in the day-to-day of it and be with our reactivity and our shame and what throws us off and makes us mad and how we behave when someone's not behaving how we want them to, and so on, well, that conscious meeting of ourselves is our healing and evolution, is the way to peace, is the way to being peace in the world, to bringing peace and healing to others. And the magic wants to meet us in all of it, but not to keep us from the pain. And so, as I was saying earlier, the more you cultivate the magic without expecting rescue from it, or without expecting it to save you from any inconvenience or cost or so-called problem, then the more easily it can get to you in troubled times, in rock bottom moments. So I also wanted to say, I wanted to invite you not to beg the magic to be with you and join you and meet you and come back to you and take care of you. Don't beg. And when we beg and when we keep asking over and over, like, nothing says I really don't believe this shit is real, or that it's actually coming to me, like begging and repeating ourselves constantly, which is kind of how I was taught to pray. So those are cool things to redefine. Now, Francine's story last time included, a moment where she just very frankly said, I begged. It was like, I don't know what to do. Like, show me where to go. I love show me. I love show me as a powerful, simple, easy prayer to ask. And so when you feel disconnected from the magic, a simple thing you can say is, show me the magic. Instead of where has it gone and begging it to come back, where has it gone is not a useful question. I always like to catch disempowering questions and find something better to ask. And I help my clients do the same. So a better thing to do with feeling disconnected from the magic, or like it hasn't been around, or like you forgot about it, is we'll celebrate remembering it and say, show me the magic, and then watch for it. And you can ask for a sign, but the sign might be really simple, gentle, sweet, little, mundane, inconsequential things. And sometimes we get a big doozy. And so certainly what Francine was talking about was a rock bottom moment in life, when she was at a turning point and a crossroads. So it's not that the universe is going to punish our begging. I've totally begged in those moments, and I'm not against it. I just want you not to beg for the magic as a way of life, as a way of relating to it. So more mundane magic. I mentioned my friend Evangeline, and I am moving right now. And it was one of those moves I didn't, it's sort of, I'm being spat out of where I live. My landlord decided to sell this home that I've lived in for 10 years. And, so much of the magic is about timing. And when I check in with timing, it's like, okay, no, it's time to go. I know that. I know I'm really done here. But so that doesn't make the moving, less tedious or less mundane, all these tasks to go through, except it kind of does, because part of the magic is looking for the symbology in things without overlooking. I think that it actually makes the move and where I go next more significant for me to pause and treat the clearings, like the things that I'm moving along, throwing away, recycling, giving away, to treat that as an important clearing that doesn't just clear the literal things it's clearing or this actual building, but that clears stuff I'm done with. And that it allows me to really like symbolically put away an era of my life and step into the next one. But so Evangeline has come to help me move, and all my past experiences of moving, and I have moved many, 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 many times, maybe too many, my experiences with moving are, it's a pain in the ass. I hate it. And yeah, it's just everything about it is just kind of awful. So I don't live that way anymore to declare those things, but that doesn't mean that it's not still underlying there and that I can get into like tension more quickly than I might dealing with the life I love, as opposed to my life that I love in this in-between time of moving. So Evangeline came over because she said, "Oh, I love this stuff. Let me come help you." And so she fucking took over. And but in the best way. Like I don't always love someone else taking over. I can be prone to taking over myself, and that's more comfortable for me. But so you know, it was like, here are the 4 bins we need. We're going to label them. Okay, this room is where this goes. This room is where that goes. And no, don't do that now. You need to come here and do that while I'm here, because that you can do when I'm not here. And I have never had, we've done it like maybe 2 to 3 hours moments together doing this. She's coming back again next week. It has never been easier to move. And, you know, so she's just a human being in my world. I have many lovely local friends and people who would gladly help me. And it's the orchestration of the universe that happened. I happened to be in dialogue with Evangeline. She happened to tell me how much she loved that. She swooped in, and it's amazing. I have another friend who's a 2. They're the helper on the Enneagram, who came just yesterday. And you know, just thanks to Evangeline, I knew what we were doing. I knew what was needed, and we got more done. So that's an example of mundane magic. And you know, I really love this goddess power deck, and I like to do oracle drawings, but I have little rules around them. Like, I don't just draw a card to fix a problem or tell me what to do. I draw a card after I've been with something and I've done my inquiry and I've asked for guidance, and I've you know, I've just met whatever stuff I have around it, and then I'm allowed to draw a card. But I just drew one, you know, while I was doing a moving task one night, just sort of like, okay, where am I with this move? And what I got was the in-between goddess, the goddess who deals with the in-between. And it's like, okay, yeah, like just without even having to think too deeply here, there's no card in the deck that better epitomized exactly where I was in that moment. But you know, so it wasn't a big deal. It didn't give me some glorious insight that healed my wounds with my dad or whatever, or showed me, you know, my life's work. What it did do though was just really remind me, and so I'm good. I'm just in that in-between time. It's okay if I'm less comfortable more often, or if I get tense and have to do more presence practices to come back to the breath. My God, yesterday I was at it the whole time my friend was helping me. She was like, "Oh, this is great. It's super meditative and lovely." And I was like, "Really?" Because I'm consciously coming back to the breath just every fucking time I think of it, many, many times a minute, because I keep taking off again. And that's a process worth being in. So very soon, Lynn Fraser is coming on. So I want to tell you a story of a moment that the magic found me when I was having a hard time. The magic is with us our whole lives. And, you know, a lot of people like to say, "Oh yeah, it was with me in childhood, then I lost it, and now I'm getting it back." And I don't believe that story. I think that what happens is maybe I lost track of it, or I forgot about it, or I stopped seeing it, or I didn't cultivate it, I didn't pursue it. All of these things are true for me, from my own experience. But the magic doesn't leave us. And I remember a time when, so I got through high school without killing myself, and I somehow managed to get through a college degree with just intense pain and suffering and losing my religion, and really feeling after that I was free falling. I didn't know who I was. My whole being had been constructed around what the Southern Baptist Church told me was important and true. I felt really screwed over by the universe because what I had been taught was truth with a capital T. It turned out was not, actually. And yeah, so I was doing better. Like I was doing better by a few years later, and I was being more myself. I was starting to understand some stuff about myself. I was finding cool things. Like I remember right around this time I'm telling you about, I just happened at the library. They were featuring Maya Angelou in the library. And I like just pretty much died over her poetry book, I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. And like Xerox copied like the pages and taped them up on my slanted ceiling, and they were hanging down. So I splattered orange paint on them. Totally four-ish activities in Oxty early 20 times. But so during that time, I hadn't really gotten to a new belief system yet. Oh, not really, not at all. And I was scared to believe anything, but I was healing. So what happened was, while I was in a new city. Hi, Lynn. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm going to finish this story and then bring you on. It's actually my transition to Lynn story.
There we go.
Okay, so in this new city, new state, very far from the other one I had been in, where I went to college. I went one night to a French film now at Duke University in Durham, and that was just a way that I kept cultivating my relationship with France. So the year that I lost my religion, that I referred to as my second year of college, and I was in France. And it suddenly occurred to me everybody around me was going to hell based on my belief system. And so that was no longer acceptable. And at some point, some dude who lived in France came to my college in the US the next year, and I met him. And I was just part of a group that, we just knew each other and had some conversations. And at the time, he was like, I thought he was really interesting. And one time he told me in a conversation that, yeah, like in French, and with French male arrogance, yeah, you just lack a certain, there's some salt to you, but there's really no pepper, and it was like, yeah, fuck you, thanks, bye. So these years later, I go to this French film on another campus in another city. There's no connection between the campuses. There are no connections between the fields he or I were in and this place where they would just happen to be showing a French movie at Duke. And I watched the whole movie, and like afterwards, I'm all feeling angsty, the good kind existentialist French bullshit stuff that I love. And I turn around and he's sitting behind me. And we both we just stare at each other, and we're just kind of shockingly looking at each other and what are you doing here? And, he invited me to get together. And I didn't. And, that was before I'd done any major or real healing. My trauma was entirely unaddressed. And I just knew, but I was starting to be myself more. I was starting to look for what it meant to be truer to myself. I hadn't learned about presence. In fact, I did everything I could to sort of escape anything that, anyway, I knew that it wasn't going to be helpful to me to hang out with someone who thought I lacked pepper. And so it was a huge deal to not go with, and that's a way we can interpret the magic badly, is to think, oh, well, I guess I'm supposed to get together with this person because I know them from before. But a lot of what the magic does is just say, pay attention. And miraculously, I did pay attention in that moment, and I spared myself tedious meetings with someone that I was going to try to tap dance for. So here's our dear Lynn Fraser, the queen of presence, the queen of trauma, or healing trauma. And Lynn, let's talk about how this topic of magic coalesces with those things.
I'm not sure even, this is such a hard thing to put into words. Sometimes the people we meet, the directions we take, I think about when I was first connected with my meditation tradition. And I remember thinking at the time, if I spent all my good karma in this life getting connected with those people and with my meditation teacher, it would have been karma well spent. We're always trying to make sense of our lives. And, sometimes we look at a person or a situation or a group that we somehow connected with, and it seems like it was a really negative impact. And, I was in a relationship for a long time, which wasn't healthy for me. And it's easy to look at that and go, oh, why was I in that? Or to, I, from a trauma lens, I can look back now and see why I was in that and why I couldn't get out. So a lot of it is, we look back at our lives sometimes, and if it worked out well, then we think, well, it must have been magic, good karma. And if it didn't work out well, then something else. So it's a really kind of a perspective. It's an interesting thing to look at from that perspective.
I am very interested by that, and by learning to reframe it. And, one of the things that one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on was I was thinking about how often people see the universe they're living in as punitive, and we just so quickly go to, I'm being punished because the magic seems to be withheld, or because I went through an experience that felt bad. Even more so if the magic sort of got us to the situation, and the situation is something painful. It's where we experience failure and learn to believe in ourselves and keep going, as opposed to, the glorious success we thought the magic was supposed to take us to. So I wanted to talk with you about that it's not a punitive universe. And is that enough, or do you want a specific question there?
Go ahead if you want to, if you have something specific. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just remember that we were talking about, it's going to be really funny if I just totally lost that. I lost it. So I guess it's up to you, Lynn.
Okay. Well, my experience is that the universe is not punitive. I think a lot of things happen. There's a lot of complexity when you think about all the different people, all of the different trauma histories, all of the different pains that people are suppressing and expressing in unhealthy ways. And there's going to be a lot of things that happen. And I don't believe that there's somebody kind of watching out for us and trying to do good things for us. And I don't think that there's someone trying to punish us. I think that things just happen. And then we can stay present with it and work with it and learn from it. And I think it's tempting sometimes to think about, well, I'm meant to learn this, or, God has a plan for me, or, whatever language we might use that's not God, but it kind of means the same thing. The universe has a plan for me. And I think it's easy to get into some kind of well, if the plan it has for me involves me being hurt or in pain a lot of the time, then I must be being punished for something. So I think it's I'm kind of interested sometimes in how sometimes when people go into deep presence and deep meditation, there's a feeling of joy and well-being and connection. And sometimes when people go in, there's a terrifying fear. And some of it, I think, has to do with the beliefs that we've formed around why do things happen to us. And it would make sense that things happen to us for a reason, because then it doesn't seem so terrifyingly random. But that's not really my experience. My experience is that we're all basically good. The universe is basically neutral. And if we're present and we're not shaming ourselves, and we're not, the more that our nervous system is dysregulated. So if we bring it back to the trauma lens, if we can regulate our nervous system and be present in this moment in time, we come fresh to each moment. And when we come fresh to each moment, then we're not dissociating. We're not catastrophic thinking. We're not trying to control it to get our needs met. We're just showing up fresh. And that to me is when the magic kind of really happens, because we're really present. And so for me, I've had a big freeze response. So people have fight, flight, or freeze. And so mine has been more of a freeze. And I must say, it was hard to have a relationship with me because I wasn't really there. And as I healed and as I became more present, then I became more available to life, but also to me. and to other people and to relationships. And I don't come into a relationship assuming that because I was hurt in the past that I'm going to be hurt again. So I'm kind of more open to, we could call it magic for sure, the magic of interacting with each other and of life, and the beauty and the joy of that.
I wanted to have you speak to first efforts at presence, or good enough presence, or just seeking to drop into presence, because you mentioned, what can happen when we go into deep states of presence. And I just want everyone to connect to presence however they can, and feel great about being newbies at it, or feeling like they're still bad at it though they keep trying. What have you got to say about that, Lynn?
So one of the things I would say is that there's a lot of hype about bliss consciousness, and that's a state of consciousness. It's not presence necessarily. So when people have experiences of bliss, and sometimes those are linked to Kundalini energy in the body, that those are experiences, and they can be very powerful and very meaningful and very helpful. And the same with really experiences of terror as well. But experiences aren't the same as presence. So that would be the first thing. Is it's easy to get feeling kind of some kind of shame or inadequacy if we haven't had the big, piercing of the bindu and going into bliss. And in the tradition that I'm in, there's a lot of emphasis on that. Those states don't really matter too much. They're nice if they happen, but that's not the point. And then the other thing I would say is that the mind is vast, and a part of the mind is taken up mostly by the nervous system, primitive brain, worries, and anxiety. And we can't really access presence if our mind is engaged in that. So to calm the nervous system, to learn how to regulate your nervous system. And as those thoughts calm down, then what happens is the silence that's always there becomes available to us. So I don't actually think we have to do anything other than kind of clear out the obstacles. And then what's there is the silence and the peace and what we would call presence.
The silence is magic in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then crazy things can, when we learn to quiet the mind, or even just to let the mind do whatever it's doing, but we're able to focus instead on what's hurting in the body, or what's happening here and now as the thoughts continue, but I'm still bringing it to now, and what are my senses telling me, because they'll always report what's here and now.
Right.
Then flashes of insight can come in, and little moments of maybe even a memory flashing in that we needed for some reason, or an understanding that something doesn't matter, that we've been hyper focused on thinking it mattered a lot. I'd like, as I said before, the magic isn't coming in, or we don't feel it when we're in a problem-solving mentality. My life is a problem to solve.
Right. And the way our nervous system and primitive brain works is that it's always trying to keep us safe from danger. And so it's got a negativity bias. It's very compulsive when we feel like we're in danger. And that's the way our system works. It's almost impossible to calm ourselves and go into presence if our nervous system's going red alert, red alert, red alert, because we just can't do it. So there's a lot of ways that we can downregulate. And in yoga and meditation, we know a lot of them. And, there's the breath, there's holding our own hand, there's looking around the room and noticing, the cues of safety in the room. There's a lot of very reliable somatic, and the nervous system is in our body. It's our unconscious mind in our body primarily, and our primitive brain and the brainstem and all of those things. So if we do some preliminary practices to come in, and what you just talked about was what's happening in my senses. So what am I feeling in my body? But what am I hearing? What am I seeing? Can I, feel the comfort of the warmth of my hand on my heart? But then as we come into that, who is experiencing that? So who's experiencing our sense perceptions? So we withdraw our mind, we withdraw our attention from the past. So we let go of, thoughts might be coming into the mind, but we let go of ruminating about the past and worrying about the future. So we come into this moment, and coming into our sensory experience is very helpful for coming into the moment. And then who's experiencing this moment? And what is the space the body is in? And what is the space that these sensory perceptions are coming through? And is that space, like right now, this particular space is where my body is sitting in. And right now, that's where it was a minute ago. But what is the space? And who is it that's experiencing the space? And so sometimes that can also be a pointer of, there's somebody here experiencing this. And then the space itself is also here. And we can put our attention to that.
I think that some of my most important training in just learning presence myself was, it wasn't a class or a teacher or anything called mindfulness. It was having insomnia and wanting to be with it differently. And I had already undergone significant transformation through inquiry, like just through mental processes using the work of Byron Katie. But so I stopped thinking that I should be asleep when I was awake. And I would just lie in bed. I decided it's time to meet consciousness if I'm still conscious, instead of thinking I should be sleeping and I'm not sleeping, because then I was just in resistance.
Right.
So, yeah. So I just started being with myself for real. I mean, I think it was also my first significant refusal to abandon myself. And I would be awake for hours, but I wasn't predicting what a horrible day I was going to have. And I wasn't thinking about what a terrible mom I was going to be tomorrow and was yesterday, or what, I really was just, I feel this in my face. My face always hurts when I like get very little sleep, and my eyes feel like this. And the room quality feels a certain way. And the darkness feels a certain way on my lids. And the more I just tuned into everything, the more I felt held, in sort of the black velvet of night, the more I felt that I, in fact, wasn't alone. And I really was thinking more of lying in the arms of gravity than anything else. But then I would think, I sort of grew that to lying in the arms of love. But it wasn't like that bliss thing you were talking about. And it wasn't meeting myself being glorious and amazing. But it was me at my worst, feeling horrible, scared, sad. Yeah. But the magic came in for me just by my willingness to meet myself there.
Yes. And that's, when we look at the kinds of thoughts that are in the mind, so you were having a direct perception practice, although you probably wouldn't have called it that at the time, but you were just directly perceiving what was happening in the moment. And so if thoughts came in about what kind of a bad mom you were the day before or something, or how are you going to get through the day being so tired, those are past and future. So then you were just coming back to the present.
Back, exactly.
Right.
Okay, what's here now? But it was about meeting myself here now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the way that often happens is that people have some kind of experience in the present moment. Oftentimes there's some kind of contraction or tightness or shame, or a traumatic memory comes up, and we get scared and we resist it, like you were talking about. And so by just finding a way to say, no, I'm just going to get to know myself, I'm just going to stay with my experience, then 90% of the mind chatter went away, or it moved out because you weren't giving it your energy, your attention anymore. And then what's left, I mean, that really is the key, is we're so scared to be with ourselves that we will do almost anything to not spend time with ourselves. And a lot of that is just there's unhealed trauma in our body. But if we can, for however we get the pathway into that, to get curious and to go, maybe I could just be here with myself. And then what happens is we discover that we're actually good inside. We're not, we're thinking we're going to find that rotten garbage or something in there. And all of those core deficiency beliefs of I'm not lovable and I'm not worthy that are based on our experiences. But those are just beliefs that are based on our experiences. And so if we can come into that, just being present in this moment, what's happening here, and then it just kind of opens up.
And then from there, we're able to do the same in beautiful moments without needing it to be intense, that it's not drunkenness, whether we're talking about actual alcoholic inebriation or just being drunk on life or on just things happening, or bungee jumping or whatever it is.
Right.
That we can actually get present to those moments when everything feels magical and aligned or just amazing timing happens. I was thinking, amazing timing is what got me to the intersection where my major car accident happened. And so that's a so-called bad thing, except I really had some beautiful experiences around that. And it was the beginning of me seriously getting on a path. It was definitely one of those life wake-up calls. But, but sometimes, when life is slowing us down and we think, oh, I'm not in the flow, the slowdown is what was needed for us just to have a random chance encounter with someone. And I had a cool experience the other day. A couple of weeks ago, my kid was going through a crisis, and I was making a bunch of calls to support what he needed help with. And I just, the first call I made was just someone who popped in my head, and I just called them, but I didn't get through. I left a brief message. Didn't hear back from them. I just went on to the next thing. So the day actually aligned gorgeously. We got exactly the solution we needed. I mean, there was a fair amount of magic going on there. But at the end of the day, this person calls me back. And I said, oh, hi, I don't need you anymore, totally resolved. And then we had this very brief conversation in which this thing that I needed to address that would have taken hours of my time to figure out and deal with got immediately addressed by something she told me. And it was over. And so the hours I put into my kids sort of got traded for that other task that I thought was on my to-do list. Yeah, so that's what that thing that I like to refer to, the orchestrating intelligence of the universe, that we can, all these things are coalescing together, and sometimes we don't know how, and we don't need to know. And there's nothing for us to force or require, or you just keep showing up now and now and now. And when we keep living in prioritizing presence, prioritizing the self-care so that we can be more relaxed more of the time, more in alignment more of the time, well, then any number of things, I come to email thinking I need to write so-and-so, and they've already written me. And it's not about how efficiently am I living and am I thinking of everything. And that's where our nervous system acts, the vigilance of.
Well, and if we know ourselves well, which we do get to know ourselves as we spend time with ourselves, and we resolve some of the shame and the trauma and those things, then we have the capacity to notice what's happening. So how would we even notice magic or synchronicity or anything if we're dissociated, or if we're caught in a loop of compulsive thinking about something? So this presence and being able to be here in our present moment is essential, because otherwise we're just going to skate right on by. We're not even going to notice.
Yeah.
So that's the whole key, is to do whatever we can. And when it's talk about the direct perception, then what generally happens with thoughts after direct perception is then we'll start assessing or evaluating those thoughts. And so we're like, okay, well, I must be a loser if I can't get to sleep, or this is going to be like this forever. And we'll start doing some kind of catastrophic thinking usually too. And then the other form of thoughts is we just go into some completely random train of thoughts. But to be able to come back to direct perception can really anchor us in the moment. So that can be a beautiful practice of going into presence, as well as a practice of getting to know ourselves. So what are the thoughts that are coming through the mind? Is it shaming thoughts? Is it judgmental thoughts? Are we just kind of going off into some kind of a lovely fantasy? Are we bypassing our present life by kind of imagining what it would be like if we were something different? But all of those things are taking us out of presence. And so in order to be open to the beauty and the joy of life, we need to be here for it. And I think that's one thing that, as I was coming out of freeze and I was really actually living in my life, I walk outside and I breathe in the air and I appreciate it. Whereas before I probably wouldn't even have noticed it unless it was really cold or something. Right now I can hear the rain on the roof and I can smell the air with the rain in the forest. And I wouldn't have probably noticed that before. So there's so many things that can really bring us back into this, just the simple joy of being alive.
And ultimately that is the magic, just that we live in a world that's full of things to bring awe and wonder to, and to just find beautiful and amazing and sweet and things.
Well, and in the meditation tradition, the Himalayan tradition that I study in and teach in, one of the things they talked about was with Samadhi, which is kind of enlightenment, is that Samadhi is an equilibrium in the mind. So it's like a steadiness in the mind. But that what happens as you progress isn't quite the right word, but as you deepen spiritually, is that you forget what it was like before. So your mind field is becoming more still, and some of the thoughts that used to be in your mind field aren't so present anymore. And so for me, if I have some kind of worry go through my mind, it might be something that lasts for a few minutes or a few hours or something. Whereas in the past, it probably would have lasted for sometimes years.
Yeah.
Right. And I had so much compulsive and catastrophic thinking that I literally was never in my body. I wasn't breathing properly. I was always worried about things. But as that healed, then even the memory of it kind of drops away. And I can kind of think in my head, oh yeah, I used to do that, but I can't really experience it like that anymore, because that's not my mind field anymore. And so as we heal and as we access presence and stillness, then that becomes what we know. And yeah, and that's beautiful.
It really is. And that's, and it often the mundane kind of beautiful, just nothing pizzazzy, nothing
right.
tell someone about, just
yeah.
And
then sometimes that will open up into an experience of bliss or something like that, and that's fine. I mean, sometimes those experiences are very encouraging, and they help us to know that there's more than just our daily life, and that our daily life is pretty special too. Yeah.
Lynn, is there anything you would tell somebody who has had trauma at whatever level of healing they're at, who quickly goes to punitive interpretations, who quickly thinks they're being punished if the magic seems to fall away, or if they seem to be just out of alignment, or things don't seem to be going well for them?
I would always come back to kindness.
I love that.
So just to come back and notice right now, I'm really giving myself a hard time. I'm going into some kind of dysfunctional thinking. Put your hand on your heart and come back into kindness. And these are patterns that we develop through our life based on our experiences. And then we can come back to this, to the stillness of who we really are and let all of that go.
I think, like, for me, it's really about interrupting those thoughts instead of running with them.
Yes, absolutely. And so there's where mindfulness comes in. We need to notice that we're shaming ourselves or that we're compulsive about something and then come back into kindness. Can I be on my own side? Can I be helpful instead of following those trains of thoughts that are really, there's so much suffering in those. And it's really not necessary and it's not true. You know, we develop these core deficiency beliefs, but they're not true. So what's really true is what we discover when we're present with ourselves in stillness and quiet, and we're appreciating those small things in life. And that's what's really true.
I like to invite people to celebrate the moment of awareness, whether you catch yourself quickly or 2 weeks later or a year later, it doesn't matter, because the moment of awareness is the moment when coming back to now and to yourself is possible again. And then all things open up again.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you.